Hi there, and welcome back to English 75A. I am your host, Sean Connelly. I am currently recording this video from the floor in my bedroom. I'm currently on sick cat duty. Our poor little guy, Tintin, fell badly on Saturday night and broke his tibia. We're all taking turns playing nurse with him. Look at that little guy with his it's called a wrap cast or a splint cast on right now. If that doesn't bring a tear to your eye, I don't know what will. But anyway, he's mending fine. You know, we're just all a little bit sleep deprived and getting on with it. But I wish I could just show you cat pictures all day, but I can't. We've got some important work to do on this very important change happening in American literature and in American culture. We'll start with Benjamin Franklin. I asked you to think about, for your discussion post, in what ways Franklin can be seen as a very contemporary American. How could he just like be dropped right into our day and age and fit in? And there are lots of different ways, you know, and I've given you some elements to think about. Went out the lines here and stuff like that. Another way in which he could be considered very contemporary is perhaps he was the first hipster. Look at that outfit. You could see that maybe in Silver Lake or Brooklyn. Let's get some information down about him. Here's a more traditional portrait. Oh man, outside the lines here too. Boy, okay. I'm going to keep rolling. He's considered to be the first American man of letters, so the first American man of great learning and writing, as opposed to a colonial man or an English or British man. So in other words, he's kind of seen as the beginning of American thinking. And holy cow, he taught himself Latin, French, Spanish, and Italian by himself. We call that an autodidact. That's an impressive list. I could barely teach myself Pig Latin, so I'm way behind him. He wrote Poor Richard's Almanac, which is a series of essays and aphorisms that is still really popular today, and this really catapulted him into the limelight of American literature and American letters. Uh, Moving further, even though he did that, he also was a jack of all trades. He worked as a printer and a writer and an inventor, a scientist and a statesman. He could do just about everything. He was an innately curious person with an incredibly dedicated work ethic. And we've learned about that already through looking at his autobiography. I'll go back to someone. And some of the themes and virtues that he promotes again and again in his writing include reason, industriousness, education, and thriftiness. Yeah, he believed in saving money, which is definitely, you know, an important virtue to have, especially in times like this. But maybe he took it a little too far. Hard to tell. I mean, I think there is something to be said for the bohemian lifestyle and, you know, not buying things unless you absolutely need them and buying them, you know, as economically as possible. If I need new clothes, I try to go buy, you know, the best thrift stores in my area because the stuff is way cheaper and, you know, you often find like a gem that you wouldn't just find hanging off the rack somewhere. I only do that for certain items, outer items. I won't buy used shoes or socks or underwear. You probably weren't wondering, but you know, you're going to get that information anyway. He was a scientist. A lot of us know that he uh, did a lot of very early experiments with electricity. And here you see him uh, illustrating different kinds of apparatuses for conveying and conducting electricity from one point to another. So again, really important information. It's hard for us to maybe imagine what life was like before electricity. And as an inventor, he invented scores of interesting products. Here, what we see is a full room heating hearth. So you've got your coal fire, your wood fire here in the hearth. And what it does is it goes through these different chambers so that the hot air circulates through the entire room. So again, we too kind of take for granted that we might have, heating or AC that come out of several vents in our house, or do so super efficiently. Franklin helped make those ideas possible. Doesn't he look comfy? And he was also an aphorist. One of the things that makes him feel so contemporary is that his use of language is simple and direct and not flashy and showy. He's not using kind of that elevated English that we saw, especially with some of the Puritan thinkers. He's using everyday speech. And this is really important as we get closer to the American Revolution as well, because it's that clear and transparent and everyday American speech that is going to reach the widest possible audience and also make that audience want to believe that speaker or writer. Now, an aphorism is a short, tight saying that is supposed to give you some kind of advice or a nugget of wisdom about how to live your life as best you can. And here's a nice one. Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that is the stuff life is made of. Yeah, well put. The sleeping fox catches no poultry. There will be sleeping enough in the grave. And don't we say a version of that, still very frequently in contemporary speech? I can sleep when I'm dead, right? Boom. Sometimes we say that when we're working hard to get something done and being diligent. Sometimes we say that when we're playing hard. I think for Franklin, work was play. He took so much pleasure out of learning and writing and communicating and exploring and inventing that I think it was all very, very focused play and excitement for him. He was also a printer. Oi, again with the lines. Okay. He printed money legally, of course, but he did. Here we see the print of a 20-shilling bill or note. And here's some very early, examples of American money. And you can see right there, it says printed by Ben Franklin. And he, as we know from his aphorisms, which we see in a lot of his early writing, not a little bit in his autobiography, but more in those other shorter pieces at the beginning, he was a very witty writer. Um, Before he died, he wrote his own epitaph, the saying or the piece of text that would be on his grave. And here it reads, well, first of all, holy cow, if if this is script, he is very, 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 very meticulous. I think it might be movable type and printed. It's just too good. I don't know. Hard to tell. Okay, back to the point. So this is what he wants to have on his tombstone. The body of Ben Franklin, printer, like the cover of an old book, the contents worn out and stripped of its lettering and gilding, lies here food for the worms. So in other words, he's comparing himself to a book that has gotten worn out and lost its content, like he's lost his life. He's lost the ability to keep living. Yet the work shall not be lost, for it will, uh, for it will, as he believed, or parentheses, as he believed, appear once more in a new and most beautiful edition, corrected and amended by the author. So in other words, what he's saying is like Benjamin Franklin is a living book. The book is old and ratty and can barely function as a book anymore. But it will be completed. It will be made into a new edition, corrected and amended. That means there will be more things added to it by the author. The author, of course, being God. Wow. That's pretty good. Now, one of the things that we need to look for in Benjamin Franklin's writings and in the other founding fathers that we'll be reading, John Adams, but especially Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson, is their belief regarding religion, which is known as deism. It's a very specific kind of belief that comes out of the Enlightenment era, and is very much promoted through the Enlightenment era because it contains a lot of the Enlightenment ideas about, humans being decent to each other and compassionate, and that being the measure of closeness to God, the ability of people to use reason and to learn the laws of nature and the laws of human beings in order to improve themselves and be better to each other and to the world. The first point, in much better, more concise speeches, it's the belief that God has created the universe but remains apart from it and permits his creation to administer itself through natural laws. Those natural laws being science, how does electricity work? How does light work? How does matter change forms? All of those things. The second point is, therefore, deism rejects the supernatural aspects of religion, such as belief in miracles and in revelation in the Bible, and stresses the importance of ethical conduct. And these are the points that really separate the deists from more conventional or traditional Christians. They did not think that revelation, God revealing himself or herself to people, was necessarily true for more than that, just one person. Um, and the notion of miracles was also something they were highly suspicious of. And one of the reasons for that is they thought, there are these natural laws, and if you can't find a scientific principle to back up what happened, they're going to be extremely skeptical of it, like scientists tend to be of such things. And therefore, revelation is scientifically difficult to understand or explain, and so are miracles. And for those reasons, they don't think that those are at the core of being a good Christian or being a person who's doing their duty to God. Now, as far as God goes, most of the founding fathers did believe in a God that might be Christian, but do not get hung up in the details like particular faiths really would. They don't seem to care much if Holy Communion really does get transformed into the body and blood of Christ in the Roman Catholic Church, or if it's just a symbol of the body and blood of Christ in Protestant churches. They think potato, potato. Hey, it's about knowing what is virtuous and being good to other people, um, and using your knowledge and compassion to make people and the place that they live in better. And the really popular analogy for what God is like under the deism faith is that he is the great watchmaker. And again, this is a really timely metaphor because, pocket watches are really popular at this time. They still are, once again, follow around the hipsters, you're going to see them. God is sitting at a table and he's building a pocket watch. He's designing all the gears, he's putting them into place, and then he's twisting the fob on it so it winds up.